My name is James Kalin. I am the editor-in-chief of Bright Ideas magazine, and also ostensibly the editor-in-chief of Seed and Spark. We are here at Sundance today. This is the final panel of 3 panels, and this one is called Under 100, or Under 100,000, whether that is the key to success or starvation in independent film. Very thankful to our sponsors for this event, obviously Seed and Spark, but Teradek, who is live streaming this event, WeVR, Frame.io, No Film School, and G Technology. Awesome. So this is we have a pretty cool opportunity here, which is we have 3 filmmakers on stage, 2 of them who are filmmaking partners and 1 who isn't, but all of whom made films for under $100,000 or production budgets under $100,000 last time, and this time are premiering much more expensive films at Sundance. So we have sort of a unique opportunity to look at both sides of the coin. But so really quick, Meera Menon, who is at the end of our string of seats, kicked off with a film called Farrah Goes Bang at Tribeca in 2013. And is here now with a film called Equity, which premieres tomorrow night. Oh, and our last panelist. Let's just grab a stool really quick, Lee.
I went to a different place.
You okay?
Awesome. And then Matthew Miller and Matt Johnson, who in 2013, their first feature, The Dirties, which premiered at Slamdance and won Slamdance, are here again with a film called Operation Avalanche that premiered last night. And then it's Kerem,
Yeah.
like caramel.
Exactly.
Kerem Sanga is here at Sundance with a film in next called First Girl I Loved, which also premiered last night.
That's right.
And his first film he made for under $5,000. It premiered at LAFF.
No,
right?
the first film that I made, which was under $5,000, premiered at nowhere.
Perfect. So one of the things that I actually really
Premiered at USC alumni screening.
that's where to look for talent. So I want to use this opportunity to actually let the filmmakers on this stage talk about their production process on their sub $100,000 film, and then we'll talk about the differences that they faced, the challenges, the opportunities, the nightmares, the enriching process that was making their much more expensive film. So let's start at the end, and we'll move this direction. So just tell us a little bit about the production process, the
first film.
finance. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've made 3 films, and First Girl I Loved is the 3rd one. Young Kieslowski is the 2nd one, and those 2 had, I guess, what you might call more proper budgets than the $5,000, and proper shooting schedule and all that. But our first film, Triggerfinger, I made while we were... So I went to USC. I was an MFA at USC in the writing program, and but I knew that I wanted to direct, and so I found that there was 2 other guys there, Ross Putman and Dave Hunter, who are also producers now on First Girl I Loved, and the 3 of us. I got in touch with Ross because he was in the class, and then he also owned an HVX camera. I don't know if you remember those guys. Those are workhorses. And he also owned a boom microphone, and got in touch with Dave because he was just willing to do work for nothing. And so the 3 of us wrote this script and just shot it while we were in our 2nd year, and then afterwards. And basically, I mean, you know, it was just a movie where you just went into it without thinking we would spend any money. And then as things came up, like we had to buy a prop gun, or we had to pay. I mean, half of that budget was buying food for the actors, and trying to find actors who would just be super down to come on the weekends and to come back months later. And we didn't shoot it all in a row either. It was, we shot it over a 6-month period, and then edited it, and then re-edited it, and then throughout maybe 20 minutes of it and rewrote stuff and reshot. So it was really like putting together a movie piecemeal over time. Nothing like you would ideally make a movie. But then by doing it that way, the stakes are so much lower, and you can just concentrate on trying to get it right instead of there was like no time limit basically. Yeah. And so we shot for way more days than even any of my two later films. We'd shoot for 8 hours and be like, all right, time to go. It's just the three of us and the actors, so it's kind of pure, I guess. But
pure
then
cinema.
Pure cinema. That's me. But then for the other movies, you get all these toys and you get a lot more to work with. But then,
well, yeah, we'll get.
You gotta plan.
Right.
We didn't plan well enough for the $5,000 one. Definitely.
Meera.
Yeah. So my first movie, Farrah Goes Bang, which is distributed by Seed and Spark, was made basically with money that we raised on Kickstarter. And my process in developing it was that I was at USC, at the MFA program as well. I feel like maybe we know each other. Hi. And I knew that I knew I wanted to make a feature after I graduated, and kind of in the same kind of budget level and scale I was seeing people make thesis films at film school with. And so that was like a rough kind of agenda I had, but what I basically did was just pair up with the most brilliant person I knew, who was an incredible writer that I met in college, and also just a stone cold hustler. So I knew she would be an incredible writing partner and also be able to help produce the movie. And she ended up becoming an incredible producer, even though she never produced before. Her name is Laura Good. She writes for Bright Ideas.
Very well.
She continues to write incredible things for Bright Ideas and otherwise. But yeah, so I basically teamed up with Laura while I was in film school, and we developed this script together, a script we knew we could make on many different tiers in terms of scale. We knew we could make it for a micro budget. We knew we could make it, if we were so lucky to kind of be able to raise more money than that, we'd be able to make it for more. But we had a script that we knew was scalable, basically, based on whatever money we were able to raise. And then after I graduated, we basically we looked at a bunch of Kickstarter campaigns and saw the independent films that were being kickstarted or being funded on Kickstarter, and kind of roughed out how we could model a budget after like the successful Kickstarter campaigns we were seeing on that platform, and did the same. And we raised $75,000 on Kickstarter because Laura Good is a stone cold hustler, and that seemed like an impossible sum for me at the time. But she broke it down and figured it out, and we all kind of pitched in and did it together, and then we made the movie. And then through film school as well, the other thing that really helped in kind of making that process happen is I had a group of friends that I graduated with that all went in on a camera package together. So that was never a line item in our budget for our micro budget. We all owned this red Scarlett at the time. And we were all sharing it and making content with it together, and that also kind of contributed to us being able to do that.
Awesome.
Well, our experience making the Dirties was a lot like Kerem's experience, so I won't talk too long about it. We shot on the HVX. Nice. We shot for like 100 days with a 4-person crew, sneaking into high schools across Ontario to get the footage. We shot for next to no money, all private equity. Our biggest line item was food. We would go to this like cafeteria place that sold food to cafeterias, and just buy these trays of like grade B lasagna and meatloaf and stuff. And we had no deadline, which I think was a blessing and a curse, which again Kerem sort of talked on. So we just got to keep shooting it until we were happy with it. And at the end, we had to spend a little bit of money when we sort of needed a satisfying conclusion, because actually shooting up a school, you need some resources and some special effects and things like that. But we didn't spend money on the film until we thought the film was worth spending money on. And we used all the music that we wanted to use, but again, we didn't pay for it until we came to Slam Dance and sold the movie. And I think that's a good piece of advice, because a lot of people just won't use that music because they'll be scared to use that music that they want to use. And it wasn't huge stuff. The music budget for the film, I think it was more than half the budget, but it was about $45,000, and that's Canadian dollars. So that's like $30 for you guys. But I do think that's a good piece of advice because our philosophy was to do everything our teachers at film school told us not to do, right? So they're like, don't shoot without releases, don't shoot without a script, don't use licensed material, don't use trademarks and copyrights. And then we just did all of that. And it worked out pretty well. So.
Well, I always want to start by saying thank you so much for having me on this panel. It's so cool to be here.
My
pleasure. My movie, it was, I think the secret was to shoot it illegally, like in real places, and to act in it yourself. That was something that was really important to me because that's a great way to do something where you don't need to tell. Like, I think a lot of time spent on making any art is in communicating it to other people. Because that's sometimes really, really hard, and it's really, really hard for me. And so a great way to save time is to just do a lot of the script and the staging on my own in the scene without anybody really knowing what's going to happen. So I mean, there's sort of a camera team that's following me around all the time anyway. And so I thought, they can just be shooting this movie and we can cut it together and so long as they don't know what's going to happen, it'll seem really real. And I think that's the secret to a successful, cheap movie.
Fluid formalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fluid formalism. That's right. I've never been told that before. But yeah, that you save a lot of money that way. And not worrying about the law. I think like that's really important, especially like in terms of being here at Sundance, like sneaking a film into the festival, or like sneaking into places and filming in those places without permission. Like that is what. I mean, you're just going to get things that Hollywood films can't do, and I feel like that's the new generation of independent filmmaking.
Well, so
thank you.
So jumping off from there, since everyone is literally here over this 10 days premiering films that cost, I think, certainly some over $1 million, perhaps some under, but maybe all over $1 million. Let's go one by one and just tell us one or two things that made your life a hell of a lot easier with the budget, and then we're going to go and look at the opposite end of the spectrum. So, and we'll start with you, Matt.
Okay. So, like, how money will change this type of filmmaking?
Well, how money helped you make Operation Avalanche?
Okay. Well, what the money wound up doing was letting us do, I would say, things that you could never normally do in this type of setting. So normally when you're shooting things, you know what it let us do? It let us mix that illegal like documentary style with more Hollywood set pieces. So we got to shoot big car chases and action sequences and things that cost, tens of thousands of dollars to do that you would never see put side by side with this stuff, with this type of stuff. It's like if in the movie Tangerine, all of a sudden there was like a shootout that was done very realistically with people dying. Like the mixing of those two things is actually quite compelling, and of course Hollywood can do it all the time, but they can't do the cheap, how did they get this footage stuff. And so by being in that middle ground, it actually let us combine all the great things that we learned shooting for free with the ability to do, I would say, more Hollywood tropey stuff, which leads to, I think, just sort of new spaces.
And we actually, to that point, so we did a 6-week shoot in the summer of 2014 with a crew. It's still a small crew, but I'd say 30 people most of the time. And we shot for 30 days, and we shot most of our big set pieces, and then we spent the next year editing the film together and reshooting a lot of sort of like the glue scenes, like the connective tissue conversation scenes between our main characters, to sort of put all those set pieces together in a complete way. So in that way, it was like two separate productions. It was like a bigger, more expensive production that we never could have done without money and resources. And then literally the last year, it was exactly like making the Dirties again, where it was, our camera team and myself and our actors, and that was about it. So it was really a hybrid production, I would say, because we're very comfortable in that space.
Awesome. Meera.
Honestly, sometimes on Equity, it felt like the only difference was I had a monitor and a jib arm, which are things I did not have on Farragut's Bang. Yeah, and having a monitor was amazing. I was like, I should have had one of these the first time around. But because it's a Wall Street movie, and because it was, it's like 10 times the budget of my first film, or whatever. Do the math, Indian. Whatever it was bigger, but it was still a movie about people that live on Wall Street and work on Wall Street. It's a movie with a tremendous amount of scale in terms of the world we were trying to represent. And so it still felt like that struggle I had on the first film, where story was relative to scale and everything was constantly, kind of a fight to get enough material and kind of pare things down and get it to its simplest form. And so in many ways, I'm still wrapping my mind around the experience, but it felt so similar to my micro budget experience because of that. And that was really my takeaway, was that it's all relative to story, right? And the scale of the story you're telling. And we were telling a really big story with Equity in terms of the scale of the world. So it felt so similar to me. Certainly, I think my experience with Farragut's Bang as a micro-budget filmmaker that could think on my feet and kind of be adapting as resources told me to adapt is what got me this job. Because I was hired to direct Equity by the producers who had been developing the film for 2 years prior to my arrival to it. And I think my ability to kind of be spontaneous as a filmmaker, as I was kind of trained to be by making my first film the way I did, is what made me appealing to them. So yeah, that's what I would say about it.
I mean, in some ways, I feel exactly like you do, in that on having more resources, I always still have this mindset of that we're not going to get it. We're not going to get the thing that I need, that I want on that day. So let's say there is a day where we had a dolly, and then we just haven't returned it yet because it's not that big of a deal. Whereas I wouldn't have even had a dolly on the last movie, but we just haven't returned. But then just to remember, we still have this dolly, I can use it again. I think too that having the more money, the thing that's really, there's two big things for me with the more money, or three, because the first thing is that it's just better all around, always. You can afford the songs, you can afford the locations, but then the thing that's really rewarded is the planning. If you have more money, then the more planning that we did, the more we got rewarded for it. The longer ahead of time you plan the locations, the cheaper and better you can get because you're looking for more of them. The more ahead of time you start following up with certain bands that you want their songs, you've given yourself lead time before the premiere, and you can, by the way, not getting the clearance for any of the songs, that would scare the hell out of me. So good job for doing that.
We ultimately did on both of these.
I'm so glad. It's just the planning that gets rewarded, I think. I mean, that first movie that we made was not, there was no sense of urgency when we were shooting, which was also really good because had there been, my weaknesses as a director at the time would have been much more apparent if there was also this time crunch. And so since there wasn't, but that brought in later, so the only way to mitigate that time crunch for me is just the planning months in advance, even before you have the money to make the movie, even before you know what the budget of, if you think this is going to be a $1.2 million movie, but you don't have that budget, if you just start doing it now, then that money will go so much farther than. There isn't a direct correlation for me between the amount of money and the how good it looks. I mean, there is a kind of a correlation, but half of it is the planning ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, so let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What, whether it's what you miss from working on micro-budget films, or what you actually feel you're hurt by, where a bigger budget actually hurts you. Let's talk about that a little bit. So with First Girl, for instance, what is one thing that from your first film you wish you could have
replicated?
Yeah.
So we're doing a snake draft.
Yeah.
Okay.
You Magic card player? Is that what that's from?
No.
Oh. That's a Magic card term. that I know quite well. Well, yeah, I know. Yeah, okay, maybe not.
No, man, I'm a film director. Magic.
I'm a big Magic card player. Big time.
They were pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now I'm just thinking about Magic cards. Still thinking about Magic cards. All right, so the question was,
The question is, what do you miss about being broke?
What do I miss? It's it's just, it's weird to think that I miss something or don't miss. It's just different. It's just so different.
Well, what's different?
No reshoots, for example. We shot for 25 days. We were done shooting August 10th of last year, and it was just as fast as we could to hit the Sundance deadline to submit a cut. And there was there was the idea of a reshoot, but we never did any reshoots, and luckily we never needed to. But so that idea of like the movie having very clear, this is pre-production, this is production, this is post-production. When it's more fluid, there's a kind of, you feel a little bit more like, I felt a little bit more like I could kind of follow my ideas and at the time, because going and shooting something didn't cost anything. Getting people together again, getting actors together wasn't that big of a hurdle. Whereas now, like the idea, like we couldn't even get actors back for ADR, Or I just said, these are the two actors, just forget it. We're not going to, so don't flag any of their lines. If there's other lines, we can get these ones back. So just the idea that it wasn't fluid anymore is, I think, in some ways kind of probably restricting in a way. But then it also, it's just a different kind, it makes you think a little bit differently. And I think I do prefer the more delineated pre-production, production, post-production. But I think ideally you would have that and then also have like 10% of your budget built in for reshoots, just to like see what, you just don't know when you go through it how you're going to re-edit it. So that's, I would say that's the number one thing that I miss from, having more money. From poverty.
Meera.
I think somewhat similarly, I think with scaling up, you do lose a kind of ability to be more spontaneous, and I do think you can discover really incredible things when you have that flexibility, just because there are so many people that experience the kind of the ripple effect, or the kind of the chain of command. So many more people that experience the chain of command when you kind of decide you want to do something differently on a whim, as you should be allowed to do, right? Once in a while as creators. So I think that we didn't on Farrah Goes Bang. We were popping up on like street corners and shooting a scene on the fly. Like, and we were very much on our feet, and the kind of spontaneous discovery. And really kind of how you discover beauty in the ordinary world was kind of a mandate of how we approach that film. And with a bit more money and a bit more toys, it's a lot of fun, because you can be more kind of intentional and kind of construct things with more intention. But I do think then your mind kind of closes down to kind of the unexpected, And so I miss that a little bit, and I think I would want to do another micro budget at some point after this, because there is something really exciting about planning as best you can, but then really having the ability to kind of do anything and go anywhere. If you're driving down the 405 and you see something like really like whatever, like a really kind of weird, beautiful, deconstructed building, and you're like, that would be a good place to do a scene, or whatever it is, having that flexibility, I think, is a really. It's like it's like documentary filmmaking. It's like discovery more so than like puzzle piecing in the way that with more money it requires you to do.
Yeah, I think we missed the autonomy to raise the money that we needed to make the film. You're just involving a lot more people, and people have opinions and notes and deadlines, and those are things we never had to deal with before. And some of the time they were really great and they would challenge us, and other times, instead of sort of sitting and doing the work, we'd get caught in debates. And I think that's probably very normal, but it was definitely a learning curve for us. And then the other thing that was hard was we like to just shoot and break when we feel like breaking. And we had this really hard-ass first AD on. I'm kidding. He's here, but he's worried about the 30 people on our crew and getting them, watered and fed and everything. And we would just want to keep shooting. So a lot of the time that would create some tension between sort of the key creators who would maybe go and shoot through lunch and then get yelled at for having the wrong pants on or something like that. And again, those were things that we never had to deal with when there were 5 people in a room working together. But everybody's happy. We liked everybody we got to work with, and we'd work with them again. But it was definitely a challenge, I think, for us to adjust to that.
Having more money, I think it raises expectations in a big way. And so when people go to see your film or they discover your film, there's a huge difference between like a first feature, a second feature, a third feature, when you can sort of detect that this is a film that's being backed by real money. And I think that actually changes the viewing experience quite a bit. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but when you sit down and you watch a movie, if you hear that it cost $100 million and you bring a whole bunch of baggage to that screening. Whereas if you go to a film and you hear that a guy made it for $5,000 with his 2 friends at USC, that's a different set of baggage that you bring into that screening, and you actually allow yourself to be surprised quite a bit more by hard work in films that cost no money, as opposed to films once they get to a certain budget level, you kind of, as a viewer, especially if you're sort of a savvy film viewer, you kind of cross your arms at the beginning and you're like, okay, yeah, impress me. Whereas when you're making a film for nothing by the skin of your teeth and it's kind of a life or death situation, then I think people are rooting for you in a way that they're not when you have money. And so I think certainly just from the viewer's point of view, you are making a film for a different audience. It could be the exact same person. A person could have loved your first film, and then they see your second film, and just by the nature of you having more money, they're bringing a whole different set of criteria to you.
Well, those answers were awesome. We have a bit of time left, just because I know there are a lot of filmmakers in this audience, and the filmmakers who are on the stage have a lot of knowledge and experience that is valuable to people who are trying to make films inexpensively. Let's open it up to the crowd. Who has questions?
Oh, is that on? Oh, yeah. You talked about actually the Kickstarter campaign. Could you talk a little bit more about the format of the Kickstarter campaign and how that was put together and that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, you can actually, it should still be on the internets. If you Google Farrah Goes Bang, I think it's one of the first things that comes up, because so many people visit. We had 750 some backers or something. And basically what we did, so we had our target, and then we approached it, very methodically. And again, Laura was really kind of a genius at spearheading this. But all of us basically, there was a team. I think there are a bunch of things that kind of, I think, were really working in our favor. We had a team. It wasn't just me and Laura. It was a group of 3 producers as well. It was a team of 5 of us that really, what we actually literally did was went to our Gmail address book that has every person you've ever emailed in your entire life, and exported that as an Excel document and combined that document and came up with a combined document of 5,000 people that we just spammed for a month, And I think and so we had that email list, and whatever we used a mailing list program so they could unsubscribe if they didn't want to get our emails. But what we did then once we had that kind of contact database, and and these were also 5 people that came from very different backgrounds. We didn't have intersecting networks. I had a film background, Laura had literary background, we had someone that worked in publishing, some media, news. All of the team was very diverse in terms of the kind of the people that put the film together. That helped. That's why I think we got to that number in terms of our mailing list. And then what we did is we had a 30-day Kickstarter campaign, and every day was scheduled out in terms of what kind of media or assets or kind of content we were going to put out there in order to get people to click on the link and go to our Kickstarter page, whether it was a stupid video of me dancing in the grocery store, or pictures of my cat, or memes of like political figures because the movie was political and its kind of content. We had a calendar and also a press calendar of who we were going to reach out to on every day. So we had it really calendared out, is the bottom line. And we had a team of people behind it that had a diverse enough network that I feel like we were reaching out to all kinds of people that would be interested in the project.
I would just like to say really quickly, too, you are at an event that is hosted by seed&spark, which is the world's first and most effective crowdfunding platform specifically for film that also has distribution built in. Kerem's film, First Girl I Loved, was partially funded on seed&spark. And so that's my plug. And and that is to say that if any of you here, filmmakers here, are interested in hearing more about crowdfunding and audience building, there's some incredible knowledge in this room. Come up to me afterwards, and I'm happy to introduce you to people who can really point you in the right direction. Next question from the audience.
This is a question for Matthew Johnson. I heard this rumor that you snuck your film into Sundance. Is this true?
Yeah, that's true, but I figure everybody knows that. That's the reason why we're getting so much attention. That, yeah, we snuck the film into Sundance.
Well, if I could just, on behalf of the three of us who probably worked our whole lives to get a movie into Sundance, I mean, I think we got a little bit of a bone to pick with you.
You don't have to. We didn't take over. We switched films with a Hungarian film that just had a P&I screening that nobody was at.
Can we keep talking about this?
Feel free to ask any questions.
I
have no questions. That makes sense.
Wow.
I figured that's why you guys wanted to be on the panel.
Well, like Matt really represents sort of like the most guerrilla, no permission filmmaking that's happening in North America. So also great opportunity to talk to him afterwards about how to break rules at the highest possible level.
That's true, and I'm very willing to talk about it.
Next question.
Cool. I have a quick question for all the filmmakers. In order to save on funds, do you guys tend to look outside of Los Angeles or outside of even the United States to find actors? And if so, what states or what countries have you guys had experience working in that could help save on production costs?
I can answer quickly because Miller and I are both from Canada, and we shoot all of our things in Toronto. That it is definitely a different system there, but it cuts both ways. Like, we actually can't have Americans act in our movies if we want to use the tax credits or government funding. So it's quite strict. I actually think it's actually a really huge benefit, but for us, I imagine for Americans it's the same. If you want to shoot in our country, you need to use Canadian talent. So that is a definite way to save money in our country.
I would just say that unless you're making like the $5,000 movie where you're just paying for food, the benefit. I mean, I've shot all of my films in Los Angeles. Sometimes gone a little bit outside just because, like with the $5,000 film, we shot at places like a little bit outside of LA. You want to shoot it like they're a little less jaded and might like let you shoot there for free. But if you're talking about actors, the benefit that you get from shooting in LA, because they're all here and they don't have to travel anywhere, you would just be surprised, I think, by the level of established talent that is willing to work with on a film that doesn't, is under $100,000 maybe, as long as you are more or less playing by the SAG rules, which at those levels are like, I guess, kind of reasonable. But what you may be giving up in like not just being able to just call up an actor and get them to work for free always, whatever. What you're giving up in exchange for the talent pool that you can get from SAG actors is worth this surprisingly little amount of money that at that level you have to pay them per day. So for me, staying in LA is pretty much the reason why we were able to attract certain actors to the roles, because it's like they're in Studio City and it's 3 days and they just drive there and that's it. So as opposed to flying somewhere and doing all that, shooting outside of LA, then it's like a whole thing that it's just another layer of complexity that they have to work into their potentially busy schedule. So if you're shooting super micro, and I think it's beneficial to shoot in LA when you're just talking about an actor pool.
I just want to add, we also, both of these films have been 100% non-union, mostly casting our closest friends, and Owen, who appears in both films. I mean, he's a high school teacher by day, so our biggest scheduling challenge is, can't shoot from 9 to 3. And it's actually affords us the opposite in terms of flexibility. So we could send, our casting crew or skeleton crew of 4 or 5 people and go shoot something in the UK. We had 2 shoots in Texas, so we shot about 15 days internationally for us at very low expense, because it's basically flight tickets and accommodation and a little bit of food.
Yeah, I think it's just the kind of movie that you're making. I mean,
Exactly.
what I was talking about, like the planning being rewarded. Is it a movie that you can like really plan and you do the scenes and you shoot it and you're done and you don't have to reshoot it, or does it have this kind of sprawling ambition where you do need people to just move at the drop of a hat? In which case, it's probably not as reasonable to try to go after certain actors for those roles. It just depends on the movie, what's the aesthetic and what your shooting style is.
Next question. We have time for one more.
There's one over there, James.
Oh, Max has the...
Hi. So since you've all been on both ends of the spectrum, I just have kind of a question. I'd love to see what your opinion is on if you had the opportunity to say, I have a short film right now that I was using it as a proof of concept, and then I have investors coming to me interested in the feature. It was based on originally a feature script, but we got tired of talking about it forever and just wanted to make a short. So now I have this situation where we could either we're planning on doing the feature in October, and we can either move forward with our same leads for a much lower budget, or people are starting to talk about casting up and much more money, and I've been down that road before. So I'm just kind of like a little bit torn between these two spectrums of, keep it low, keep the people
Keep
you
it
know.
low.
Yeah, totally.
Is it your first feature?
It would be the first feature, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Keep it low.
Yeah, we in Canada we have a friend. His name's Andrew Cividino. He had this exact same problem 2 years ago. He went and made the short just because he couldn't get the money together for the feature. The next year he got to make the feature, and he took it to Cannes Critics Week. Same cast. I think he recast one role, but
The main guy.
The main guy. But still,
With Johnny Depp. Right?
I would say first feature should always be as
was great.
cheap as you could possibly make them. I mean, I think all movies should be as cheap as you can make them, because even on the Dirties, we haven't made a penny off that movie. So in spite of our distribution and winning Slam Dance and doing really well on the festival circuit, we still haven't recouped, and our budget was under $100,000. So
That's great advice. Thank you.
You'll also know in your heart, if these guys are right for the role. I mean, you shot this short already. So, I mean, if they're working for you, then you do it. Plus, you already have this great built-in relationship with them, and you can fall back on all of the emotion that you developed when you shot the short, which is actually really valuable, especially if you're shooting for a short amount of time. You bring in strangers, and then you show them the short, and you're like, yeah, you got to be like that guy. Immediately, you're on your back foot. So I mean, if what is catchy about your film is actually the way that it's made and your vision for it, then I don't think it matters who you cast. Really, you want to do it in the way where you're going to be the most mobile.
I think the only thing, I would exactly echo what he said about. I think you should just go with. I feel like you probably already have a feeling about what you want to do, and if there's actors who you feel like they're doing it perfectly. Even for me, it's even if it's just look at all the movies here. I mean, there's very few, even the actors that are the more well-known actors that are in my film. They're in relatively small roles, and the fact of their involvement is not really going to make or break the life of the movie, and it's really going to fall more on, is it convincing? So I think when you're talking about should I replace this actor or that actor, you should just think, is it in your gut? Was this person perfect? And if not, then replace them. But if they were, unless you're talking about over $1 million, then it's better to go with somebody, even from a marketing kind of point of view, for the overall health of the movie. It's better to go with somebody who's going to nail it, as opposed to someone who has maybe a little bit of a cachet and is on a television show or something, but that you don't know at all, and that it may not be right, but just is somewhat recognized. Like, I feel like it's either like A-list or what you think is going to work.
Yeah, when you're working on small films, it's such cheap small films. It's such a delicate process that one person can spoil the entire production. That could be the sound person, but it can really be an actor.
Everybody's got to be down.
Yeah.
You know, they got to be super down with what you're doing at that level.
Well, thank you guys so much for sitting here for 40 minutes and
Thank you guys.
sharing wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much.